Okay, so this is the last one of the day. It's actually an hour and 90 minutes. So I was trying to, I know that you guys come from the US, probably get jet lag. That's right away. But I'm going to try to go through some of the slides, and also at the end, I actually treating this one really like a tutorial. So actually, I prepared some links for you to try. But in any event, I'm going to try to go through the slides. This is the topic actually the AutoTutor is it's our implementation of conversational-based intelligent tutor system. Some of you probably know AutoTutor, right? Of course, you know AutoTutor. But this one is it's almost like my version. In other words, I'm trying to make it a way that can be easily used. Not only as a research tool and also as educational resource. So I have a lot of collaborators. You know, outreach are actually one of the slides that Dragon had as a collaborator of yours. So I'm going to try to go through those things when it's introduction, basically talk about where we are, and also AutoTutor framework, and then some kind of theoretical perspective, and then talk about technology, and then I'm going to have some applications or demonstration that you can see. So one of the things that I'm going to talk about actually is tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to in my hour, I'm going to talk about AutoTutor and also how to connect to XAPI. But here I'm going to talk about briefly as a part of the XAPI, part of the enabling technology. So here's what we have over here. This is a group of people that we have at the University of Memphis, and then of course among those, we actually have a lot of fundings to do those kind of stuff. And one of the project, those $34 million are caroling, and we were actually one of those very right? So that's so we go back quite some years, and then. All those money, the 34, I write out, it's kind of probably close to $38 million, goes to the research of a very, very simple framework for learning technologies. And this is actually called AutoTutor framework. We were very early days, when we were doing AutoTutor is just application. It's a specific application to teach, at that time, probably qualitative physics or computer literacy. But actually, we evolved this AutoTutor as a framework. In other words, it's more like a compositional interface that engage interaction between learner and content. So here's a very, very basic idea behind the AutoTutor. Very, very basic. It's so basic. Some of you probably give a little laugh. So how can this thing, get $30–40 million of funding? Well, the fact is, this one, of course, came out. It was not as easy conclusions. Actually, from the observation of hundreds of hours of real tutoring sessions of senior student, tutor, junior or freshman about statistics. Okay, so from observing the hundreds of hours of tutoring, originally Grace and East College was trying to find maybe the first tutoring, one-on-one tutoring, is very, very effective. They were trying to find a very highly crystallized wisdom that get tutor actually used in tutoring. But actually they failed to find. They find something very, very simple. Now, this one is actually called an EMT. It's called expectation misconception tailored. They find that when a senior student teach a freshman or a junior student, they basically give the student a question and then expect some answers, and they expect some misconceptions. And then if the student, the QT, cannot come up with the expected answer, and then the teacher gives them hope. if the student actually give them provide an expected like this typical misconceptions, and then the tutor help. That's it. Okay, so if you ask a question and the student failed to cover the expected answers, and then the tutor help. From that perspective, anybody, a senior student, can serve as a tutoring function if they spend extra 2 hours before the student. Think about that. Okay? Now that's very, very interesting because you usually, like a tutor, you need to know more. Well, they know more, but not a whole lot more. Okay? So by doing this, then you say, well, oh, this tutor, what happens if the student asks a question the tutor cannot answer? Well, you know what tutor does, right? You say, hey, you answer my question. I'm not answering your question. There is a asymmetry between tutor and the tutee, and the tutor can effectively refuse to answer student question. So the tutor do not have to reveal the weakness of their knowledge. Okay, so because of that, the tutors, the senior student, keep earning $30 or $20 an hour of money without really knowing a lot. Okay, for the successful or experienced tutor, the trick is actually using this one very, very, very efficiently, called expectation, misconception, tailored dialogue. Okay, so that's very, very, very interesting. Now, this one, my interpretation of this one is actually very, very interesting. So, for those of you probably know that when people design computers to use a computer for tutoring, especially in Western, they feel like, oh, computer must be knowing everything. They named their tutor called Plato. Okay, they named their tutor like Aristotle. Okay, they use Asian philosophers as their tutor. They expect tutor can do a lot. But that's not necessarily in our Oriental culture. In Oriental culture, we say, if anybody can be your teacher, right? And we never even find any tutor we call it co-teachers. Do we have a tutor called co-teachers? No, because first you cannot build that way. Second, it's really not the kind of tradition of teaching and learning in the Oriental culture. The Oriental culture that we learn from our colleagues. Okay, so this actually comes down to really consistent with the way that we treat, the way how we get knowledge. So that's very I think it's very it's a different perspective. So based on this, so then let me give you. So here you ask a question, you have a few expectations, and then if the student doesn't say anything, you say, sure, go ahead and say things. Go ahead and say things. To ask the student to say things. That's called a prompt. Okay? If the student says something wrong, you give them a hint. Okay? If the student is not as smart, you even give him a prompt, a hint. He cannot answer, you just give them a prompt. Okay, so that's how it works. Okay, so that is the basic kind of a mechanism that engaging the learner and then the tutor. That's it. Okay, so that was what really summarized from the hundreds of hours of observed tutoring and tutor interaction. And after that, it's actually since '97 there's nonstop. So we first built the computer literacy. Okay, the question is this. Basically says, and this one says, hey, tell me how computer RAM work. Okay, computer literacy. Then when you ask this question, the computer scientists certainly have expected answers. You're just trying to make the student say what you expected to be answered. And also, this is the physics. This physics talk about, this is the two cars. a small car bump into a larger car, and say why small car just goes over fly, and the bigger car there is not as damaged as much. Okay, you have those very easy to compute, construct the expectation and misconceptions. And also, this is a newer one called the physics. This physics is deeper learning, and this is biology. And then now this one actually Kurt worked with Carolyn before. Right now it's in ASU. Kurt and Art and our group find out just by doing that, it's so interesting that if the student has previously had some misconceptions on things, you just go ahead and ask them to read the book again. They're very likely to reinforce their misconceptions. Because that's where the misconception first come from. They do not understand. They read the book, does not help. Sometimes you say, okay, get some rest, you're going to do better. But by having this dialogue, actually help them to learn, to correct their misconceptions, to make them understand more. And then it's almost equivalent to a human tutor. Actually, our human tutor condition is actually PhD in physics. Okay, so now, so actually, you're duplicated paper on this. So we built a lot of stuff. This is actually one of the Taiwanese colleagues that built how to producing Chinese sentences using this system. And then, of course, we built a lot of stuff. And then, so this is a very recent product that we have called the CISO, the Center for the Study of Adult Literacy, that IES funded a center grant. And this is critical thinking. So now you realize before we had one talking head, the tutor, now we have two, and then we also been using this one in the virtual environment. In the virtual environment, this is actually triage in a mass casualty simulation, and teach how to train the first responders to triage victims. And then this is actually an ETS project that we have. And then this is in a virtual environment. This is also a combat medic that we use. We implemented this. So we actually have quite a few things developed. Okay, and then all those applications we invariably have two things. Okay, one is we have a talking head. Okay. Second one is using natural language. Okay. Now you know that the language, technology, just developed, right? Getting better and better. And very early on, this is our very early on. Okay. But most recent ones we actually have better. I will show you a couple of things better. That's the first thing we have. And most of our products have a big head, because we want the learner to really read lips, although not as accurately reflecting their spoken, but actually at least different vowels that they actually can distinguish. So this is actually a picture that my postdoc at the Art and myself we wrote a paper about a history of AutoTutor, and since early 90s. That's one our first, example, and then until the 30. There are a lot of applications. So this is AutoTutor. I'm going to build. I want to leave some time to really have your hands-on on AutoTutor. So this is kind of brief AutoTutor. Now you may ask the following question again. So such a simple framework. How can we get millions of dollars from the government agency? There must have something behind. So then say, what is behind AutoTutor that is actually very attractive? Okay. First, I can explain the EMT, expectation, misconception, tailored to anybody. For a student, you can go ahead and explain to your grandma. They understand. Any teacher will understand. We never fail to sell the basic idea. But that's not really going, far. So most recently, we say, okay, what is the theory behind? What is the technology behind? What is the application that is attractive? And where is the impact? Okay. So in the rest of this, maybe 40 minutes, I'm going to just talk about this one. Try to convince you a simple idea actually can go a long way. It's just like very, very successful businesses right now. They're starting with very, very stupid ideas. Okay, so first we say that the AutoTutor is actually a framework because it's really conversational in conversation between the learner and the system. Okay, the idea is actually very, very simple. Very, very simple. If you have children, you realize when you read bedtime stories with your children, okay, you probably can write a better book, but you probably don't. You have whatever book you have, and you engage your kids with the book, whatever the book says. Okay? And also you realize that's exactly what professors do. Okay? I probably can write a better chapter. I want to write a book. No, I just use exactly the existing book. I will make sure that my student learn from the book, or I explain the content of the book to the student. Okay? So if you think about how ITS, what do we do? It's the same. We have a content, okay, and then we understand what the student learned and know or do not know. We put them together, hold the culture together, make them interact. Okay, so if you look at what we have, the ITS is a play a media between the content and the learner. Okay, we make them converse to each other. Use the specific for this one. Of course, there are other kind of tutoring systems like CMU and that place that they built. They use their own. They use the specific principle in kind of psychology, and then find the most powerful, most exemplary content and build the most efficient the tutor. That's what it is. ITS right now, if you look at it, it's hard to be standardized because it's a unique combination of content and learning theory in a special environment. So this is exactly the example of this. Okay. So now you kind of it's just conversation. So we have our first version. We build a conversation. It's a non-computer science version of application. Data, engine, content, everything blended together. Okay, it's virtually not duplicatable. Okay, if you look at our code, our first design document, our first version of AutoTutor, you will have before it's not an object-oriented program there. Okay, but works. So later we say, okay, how can we make it this separate? So we actually built something called an ACE, that we call ACE. A very good name. The AutoTutor Conversation Engine is actually an engine runs the script. Okay, so this is just RESTful service. Another one is a script output. How can we do this? Or why do we do this? If you think about this, the following: when you have a specific content, and you have a tutor, and you have a student, you know exactly, or at least you can expect exactly how would the best way that to interact. First, there are asymmetry, right? The student answers teacher's question. Teacher do not answer student questions. You have some control there. Okay, and then you have the EMT, expectation, misconception, period, dialogue. So this ALSET is actually like writing a play. Okay, imagining what role does what and what time. Okay, so this ALSET is actually a scripting tool that following a standard going XML. I can show you that is the XSD. Sharing the standard ways of producing a play, where the student answers question. Okay, and then if the student do not answer what the other actor does. That's it. So that's the authoring tool. And then this one is like how to present. We call the scope. We call the shareable knowledge object. But that term comes with some kind of borrowing of the terms because I'm a mathematician. I like computers, and I do a lot of programming, and object-oriented programming is something that I like. I said, okay, why don't you call it object? So that's the shareable knowledge object. And then, of course, I work with ADL, which I will talk about tomorrow about XAPI. But SCO is the shareable content object, and then I call it the shareable knowledge object. Obviously, that's very, very intuitive ways of transferring from one to another. Okay, so this is what the conversational-based kind of IT answer. I call that SKO, shareable knowledge object. Okay, so I actually get quite a few fundings to develop this one. One of the things is actually from the US ONR that I say, okay, let's use this one to teach a student how to read scientific text, like STEM in the STEM domains. So this is what the AutoTutor framework. And then again, those are actually those agencies that are willing to find our book. So I'm not going to give you this example. I just show this one here. This one actually have links. I'm going to go later. So this is the most recent versions of implementation of SCO, a shareable knowledge object. Okay. What you have is actually have a professor, and then have a student, and have 3 students. So before we would have 1 student. Okay. Now we know that from 1 student, from tutor to a classroom. Okay. When a student in the classroom, you actually enjoy the interaction. You actually observe how other people answer questions. You know, gee, they can answer questions on me, right? Or you say, oh, I'm feel better because I can answer better than that person, right? So that kind of interactions that really is missing from one-on-one kind of tutor. So this is the most recent version that we have. Now, what this one really have is you actually have roles. This is professor, and usually we call this one like smart event. Yeah.
So, but they're not real students, right?
They're not. We here. One thing that we are trying to doing is we're going to scale. We're going to be making something very, very clear. Then using this one replaces real human occasionally to make the student believe they actually be behind. Otherwise, they're not taking it seriously. Yeah, but of course, eventually, tomorrow I'm going to talk about a framework that see how can we make this one as real as possible. This is just this. So what happened is, for example, if I have nothing, if you're asking me a question, I say no idea. Well, usually that's like a stop, right? You cannot do anything. I have no idea. How can you do? So if that's the case, we use this for actually converse. And then this is a smarty pants. It's actually, like a good student. And this one is actually, like a like airhead, just not doing, very, very well, and then always the answer something that is not very good. And this is we call the shake-up student, asking deep philosophical questions or something that just shake, wake you up kind of things. So those four I will have to give you an example, and anybody can create one. Actually, if you have Google account, you can create one. And then if I have no idea, if the student has no idea, I will make them to do, so we use vicarious learning for the student to get started, understand. So if the system, detected that I'm actually teachable, okay, and then this person is going to teach me, okay. If I'm beyond the teachable, I can compete with the good student. If I'm actually very, very good, then I can teach the bad one. Okay, and then if I'm trump everything, then I will interact with this like a deep or shake-up student. And this is something that we're working right now. So this is example I will show you. This one is actually another one. The reason we call it scope, we call it scope, it's a shareable, and it's knowledge. I know it's an object. It's actually you can use anywhere. So this one, this project is actually from the ONR Grant Challenge that we have with our teams and other 3 teams. What we have is when we're in the middle. This is actually an explanation of a standard mathematics. This is actually solving equations. So what we want to do is we identify, imagining now you realize, maybe not the same. The student have problem, parse and understand or comprehend a typical kind of science text. They do not know where's the most important places. Even they follow the example and they can do the problem. And if you close the book, ask them to do, to make one, they're probably missing places. So what we do is we actually hired a lot of interns. Okay, identify the critical places in the explanation, make it like a hotspot, and then we bury hotspot right here in each one of the hotspot here, and then ask the student question. Okay, so each one of those places, we have anywhere from 1 to 12 different, AutoTutor mini sessions. Okay, and then they go through. So that's our own project. And actually, we are continuing working on that. Joseph, I think either Joseph or you call it Keith or somebody called Keith, my student. Yeah. That actually, it's implemented that. Okay, and then the trick is we are absolutely not duplicate the content. Whatever content over there, people already spend millions of dollars. We make use of them. We only enhance or make it better. In other words, it's like reading bedtime stories. I've got a very good book over there. I just read with my kids. That's the idea. Okay. So this is Alex's problem that we got, one of the problems. And this is the tutoring. I will give you examples. And this is actually teaching example that I can share if you know Chinese. I can share with you how to teach, writing Chinese poems. Okay, so all those things are kind of out of here. Now I'm going to talk about the really why we got the money to develop, because otherwise those are just like some computer tricks, right? What is the theory behind? So I'm going to just briefly go through this. And then we're going to get some examples. Watching the time. I think we should have enough time. Now, by the way, if you have questions, that's fine. If this is a tutorial or workshop, we're supposed to be interactive, right? Remember, we're doing IPS. Monologue is not very good. Okay. So far, any questions? No questions? Okay. So. There are absolutely no way if we say, oh, we use a EMT and then do some systems without a theory behind it. Actually, those of you who are in Memphis, that we cannot do things without having a good theoretical, the background. We always do a theory-driven research. So the relevant theories, actually, we say, well, we know this is interaction. Okay, obviously. In the EMT, expectation, use, conception, data, dialogue. If I ask the following question, I say, hey, is this a table? You say, yes. Stop. You cannot ask a simple question that actually they just say yes or no. There are different ways of getting students engaged with conversations. Okay? And also, there are other ways that you actually can motivate the student to interact with. So there are principles. This is the IES 7 learning principles, and then another one is 25 learning principles. This is actually Gracer. It's an inaugural kind of article when he is the editor of the educational psychology. And then you have others. Okay, this is one of the principles. What is most effective, efficient ways or effective ways of producing feedback in the learning system. And then this is another one. So even in most recently in APA, they have 20 learning principles. There's no lack of learning principles. Every one of the, agency or famous research group, they're actually producing their own perspective of what is most efficient learning. Okay, so there is no lack of theory behind. So that means there's no lack of research questions or research project we can do. So we have a lot of things to do. So just to give you the following example, which is relevant to this AutoTutor. If you look at the one we have, the EMT, expectation misconception dialogue, right? We ask, or the tutor asks a similar question, and expect answer. Okay, expectation misconceptions. The way you ask questions, you be very, very careful. You will ask deep reasoning questions. Okay, the reason, remember the study that the misconception, they read the book, they cannot understand, because that's where the original misconception was developed. Okay, because nobody asked them the deep reasoning questions to make them to think deeply to correct their misconceptions. So asking deep reasoning questions is one of the key, is actually one of the guiding principles behind conversation-based tutoring. Okay. Now you say, well, what is the deep reasoning questions? There are actually this is actually I can share that with you. But the questions actually there are altogether 16 different type of questions that Bracer and his student summarized. There are 16 different questions. And among those 16 different questions, there are 3 different categories. There are shallow questions that you can observe a lot of textbook, a lot of not very well made, questions to ask. What's the definition of this? Okay, definitional questions, concept completion questions. Those questions, most of the time, you can directly get in from what you read. Okay, and then they have intermediate questions, give you some more thinking in order to answer the question. But most importantly, in order to really make the student think, it's asking the deep reasoning questions. Only you can associate the deep reasoning questions with the misconceptions and expectations. If you do not ask deep reasoning questions, they probably do not even know how to answer it. And also, the system probably won't be able to answer it back. So in other words, this is actually very, very important in a conversational-based tutoring system. You ask questions because you ask questions to stimulate a conversation. So those are the examples. Ask the right questions is the key. So those questions are actually generic. Doesn't matter what domain you have. Every domain, you have those questions. Here, the deep reasoning questions is not really like a deep philosophical questions. What is the meaning of life? That's not the deep question we're talking about. Okay, it's the question that trying to make them to understand the relations of the concept and what is the logical relations and things like that. Okay, so those are 3 different kind of questions. So, so that's just one example of theoretical, theories that implement in the tutoring system in all those millions of dollars. Now, when we ask for money, we actually have a promise to deliver something. Okay, in order to do that, we actually have technologies. Okay, we need to do that. So I'm going to have selected technologies that are actually behind the tutoring system. Okay, so I'm listing just a couple of them. This is Cometrics is actually text analysis thing. SRA is actually my term of semantic analysis. I call it semantic representation analysis. And also GIFT is actually a framework that I will mention. And the XAPI I'm going to briefly mention, but I'm going to go into detail tomorrow. Okay, so I'm going to focus on SRA, semantic representation analysis, because Carolyn's here and she does text analysis, right? And also mean, he also does text information language processing. But mine, it's a stupid one. This is very, very stupid. In other words, it's just something that a computer can do it very, very quick. Okay, So let me let me assume that you do not know much about the semantic analysis, or at least from this perspective, that basically it's vector-based semantic analysis. And this is something I generated in the meaning of life. Okay, so meaning of life for the computer, just 300 dimensions in a vector, or association with a lot of terms. Okay, now meaning of life, the semantic representation, they actually formulate the instance of a framework that I call the semantic representation and analysis framework. They actually have three axioms. Okay, now we do have to go into detail, but those three axioms really help us implement the semantic representation, analysis in ITS very well. So the first axiom is called hierarchical representation. That means when we use semantics to represent language, they are hierarchical, right? We're not really all the way down to the phoneme level yet, but we're looking at the words, phrases, sentences, and then the paragraphs. That's like hierarchical axiom. The second axiom is algebraic representation. So we assume that you actually can represent it. Okay, so that's the third one is actually computational aggregation. With these three principles or axioms, you actually can make the following happen. Okay, this is not actually magic. This is actually theoretical derivation that you're actually capable of doing this. What I call the semantic decomposition. So in any piece of text, you actually can decompose with finite number of dimensions. Okay, and those things are actually finite. Okay, so not only you can decompose this one, you actually can compare any two pieces of text in the specific dimension that you're talking about. Okay, so that's basically this is within the framework you actually can make this happen, and also you can be representing piece of text. Okay, so now I'm showing this one because this is relevant to Joe's self-reflection. This is where the self-reflection they use semantic analysis. Okay, so I will give you an example in the AutoTutor how this self-reflection work. Now, in the tutoring system, in AutoTutor, there are actually several modes, several levels of conversation between AutoTutor and learner. There's one of the stupid way that AutoTutor communicates with learner. Okay, it's only nod or shake hand. Okay, here's how it goes. Let's imagine the following scenario. You can implement it anywhere. You have 5 slides displayed on the PowerPoint. At the end of those 5 slides, before the learner goes to the next, and say, "Hold on, tell me what you have learned." Okay. Now you realize Bob Wisher from ARI, I'll research into it, actually conducted a study that just randomly in the course, popping up like a, "Hold on, tell me what is going on," and actually find a significant learning gains. Okay, instead of just going through the entire content and just stop occasionally asking to rethink what you have, it's effective. Okay, now this one is, now you realize when the student says, "Okay, I'm just going back, I don't care." So then the student can now utilize the thinking that's going to go. Now, if the system says, "Tell me what you learned, tell me what you know." If the student feels like, "I cannot afford the system," that's probably better. I actually read a paper the other day, I will show you. So here's what happened. So why in a conversational kind of system, why do you ask the student and say, tell me what you learned? Okay? If you prevent the student from copy and then paste, you ask them to type 1 sentence or 2 sentences at a time. Okay? And then imagine this, just imagine the face-to-face. When you say, "Oh, tell me what's going on," student will wait. If the teacher says, "Mm-hmm," right, go on, move on. So any kind of student feedback will help the student decide what to do next. So now let's implement that system. Here's what happened. Okay, let me see whether I can write. Can I write here or not? Nothing, right? Okay. Imagine this. So when you ask the question, remember again the 5-slide kind of scenario. Okay, or in your self-reflection, scenario. So tell me what you have learned. Okay, remember the content of this 5 slides. I have the semantic answer. I use this one to actually have a spectrum analysis of the answer. This is the answer. Okay, this is the question, and this is the semantic representation. They are projecting to the dimension. Okay, so when they first come in, I will do only 2 things. I either ignore or shape, because I can do semantic decomposition if you have a high relevance. If your answer is highly relevant to the semantic answer, I will say, yeah, okay, I'm nodding my head. If it's not, I'm going to shake my head. Okay, so that's the first one. Only judge relevance and irrelevance. I'm not really asking you, saying you're right or wrong. I just want to make sure you answer my question. Okay, now, the second or any answer, I'm doing 2 things. One is judging, are you answering my question? In other words, relevant or irrelevant? In other words, are you repeating your answers or having something new? So now, this decomposition gives you a 2x2 table. Okay, irrelevant new, okay, irrelevant old, relevant old, and relevant new and relevant old. Okay, now think about the 4 numbers every term. If I'm a student, every term I give you relevant and new information. What do you think? You are answering my question by adding new information. So I'm going to nod. The teacher is going to nod, yes, good job. Or not even say good job, just say positive reinforcement, right? So that's relevant and new. What happens if you have relevant and old? Relevant and old means you're answering my question, but not really adding new things. That means you probably lost your answer. Okay, I probably say, stop, let's move on. That's what you have to remember. Okay, what happened is irrelevant and old. Irrelevant and old information is high. That means that you are not answering my question, but you are most of the time repeating your own answers. What does it mean? It means very likely you have misconception. You don't even know what an answer is, but you think you get the right answer. Okay? Now, how about, so that's detection of misconception. Okay? How about irrelevant and new? Irrelevant, not answering my question. New, you come up with new things. You're just beating the bushes. You're guessing what it is. You have no idea what the answers are. You have no idea what is the, you have no idea. Okay. So the relevant and new information, this one here, the relevant and new, relevant and new information really depends how much you know, and also irrelevant and new information is actually detecting how much, So when I was presenting this one in front of the group of business leaders, I call this one LCC because this one is actually I use as a local student model under the conditionalized on the question and content, not LCC. But the business guy he said, oh, you're building a bullshit detector, which is. It certainly is, right? If you consider, the irrelevant new information, high, then you're just not doing it. So this is the, just application of this one. That's relevant to Joseph's self-reflection. Okay, so this is very simple. It can be made. Cometrics actually is something that developed at the University of Memphis for quite some time, since 2001.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
So what I find very interesting about that is that there's a lot of work by tons of people on prompting people to explain. But like you said, how do you actually get students to do it? Especially when they start to think it's not helpful. And also maybe it's not always good to prompt people. Like sometimes maybe it's actually bad or it's not efficient. So could you just say a bit more, how do you use these kinds of metrics to decide, should we prompt them or not? Should we change the prompt? Should we give them, maybe we just have some ideas.
I think that if the student do not say anything, you cannot do it, right? And also, if you want to avoid the cases where the system getting sued and award, right? So one of the projects we did it with the Army, and then I set up a rule that, okay, if you do not answer, I'm not going to stop, okay? And then the people from the Army said, I don't think you want to do that, because if you get them very, very annoyed, you just lost your student. So I set up like a new 3. Only 3. They answer 3 questions, and then they move on. If they cannot answer, so in this EMT, the last stage is actually called elaboration. Give an answer. Read the right answer. Yeah. But if the student do not type or anything, that there is no help.
Okay, just to kind of get a perspective, so you're in student center for teaching and learning. So could you imagine how these conversational agents might be plugged into, like, ideally, or are there courses or settings where instructors would say, oh yeah, I'd like to try something out like that here?
Okay.
Yeah, definitely, particularly like when you're looking at courses like the GEQ, where it's 1,000 students who are taking
What's GEQ?
general education modules.
Oh,
There's one on reasoning, there's one on questioning and computational thinking, and these are compulsory for all students. And probably those are places like really these kind of things will help.
Gotcha. And do you think like instructors would be, open to this kind of idea, or like, because, well, how would this work, Xiangen? So they've got all these courses where people are doing quantitative reasoning, computational thinking. So you plug in some of these agents. So
Yeah.
What would you need from them? What do you have
Okay. Well, let's then 3 minutes. Yeah. Then I'll have the next 30 minutes actually walk you through how to make this go work with your course. How about that?
Okay.
So this cometrics, probably I can spend like another an hour for this one, but I'm not basically analyzing text to its extreme. Okay. So far, this cometrics measure, I've been in different places. They use this one as their golden standard. They're producing something. They say, okay, compare this one with cometric. This is what they have. So this is cometric. I'm not going to talk about this one, but this one is the gift. This is something that we have been intimately engaged with the Army Research Lab, and then it is actually a framework that actually how everything together. Okay. This is gift called generalized intelligent framework of tutoring. It's actually specified different modules. It's actually a theory-driven framework. So when we talk about ITS, intelligent tutoring system, we have a learner model, domain model, and pedagogy, and the presentation, and output. This is everything together with the framework. And then, Ben, you were in one of those advisory board.
last year?
Last year, yeah. So this is the meetings. Did you do the outreach one or which one? Assessment. So that's the assessment one, I think. This point 4, this tutoring system, domain modeling. I think we did this year for team tutor. Oh, yeah, this is our team tutor one. When this one actually, it's rather the theoretical kind of approach of ITS is almost like a holistic approach. all different models. And then of course, this is actually API I will talk about tomorrow. Basically, say how can we how this user data can be collected and then in a standard fashion. So, so this is going to be tomorrow. So for the tutorial that I have, I prepared this. Okay, so that means if time permits, I go here. That is a lot of selected a lot of application. I'm going to go here and do hands-on. Okay. So if you have a computer, okay.
You just see examples of his one.
Okay. See, this is the I don't know why it's full screen, but it's okay. So this is actually a course I prepared for this tutorial. So this is Moodle. So let me go through this one, and then I will send you the link. You can log in as a student, and then do this. So can this one have a sound? Can this one have a sound? Okay. So this is a typical kind of like a skull. Okay. So I'm not sure. There's no sound. Okay. Okay. Let me try to do this one here. I think I got sound.
Hi, I am Ben. Do you mind telling me your name?
So in other words, if you create one for your own, this is like a kind of standard way. So if you do not pipe your username into the system, this is actually asking you. So I'm going to pretend myself as an English name because I don't have an English name. So Dave, I'm going to do this. Okay.
Dave. Very glad to meet you. You may start when you are ready.
Okay. So this one actually explains what AutoTutor is. Okay.
Hello, I'm Ben. I'm part of the AutoTutor team. Today, I'm going to talk briefly about some of AutoTutor's exciting features.
Basically, those 4 characters.
Hi, I'm Susan.
They actually an educator. So sometimes the teacher proposing a question.
Hello, everyone.
Susan,
My name is
answer, and then
I'm a researcher.
Anna probably give an answer that was not
What's
right.
happening?
And then
The name's Stan. I'm a grad student.
Okay. So you can do this.
Happy to meet all of you. So, what brought you all here today?
Okay, I'm gonna close this one. You can play now. This part is actually information delivery. In other words, just delivering the information. So for you to do this, for you to use this one, it's free. You have to have the following. So this is not very big. Let me see what I can do.
Something like right, this SKO online or something.
No, this actually is at the end of this PowerPoint, the hands-on. Yeah. Yeah. So you need to have a few things if you want to use your own system. One is you have to have a Google account. Okay, Google account. Second one, you need to have a GitHub account. How many of you have a GitHub account? Okay. How many of you know how to change the GitHub into a website? In other words, remember you use your GitHub. If you have a public repository, you can immediately change your public repository into a website. That's really used to deposit your media. Okay. So the third one is actually you want to use a learning record store. okay? The learning reference scope means if you create something, if you have, say, I have a, like a course, I want to use this one. From that time on, all my student interaction go to learning reference. Okay, so that's three things that you need. I actually work through those, each one of those things here. So, so this is the instruction of how creating your first, interactive first to scope. Okay, so basically, and then this is instruction. So I'm going to go through this one maybe in 5 minutes. See how, I'm not sure how the screen will look. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a Google account that's already done.
Do you want us to help you zoom in a bit on text?
I don't know how to do it.
Do you know?
This will be fine.
No, I mean,
This, not this.
yeah, it's actually over there.
That's the most zoomed in.
Maybe this.
Do you see it now? No. So basically, you need to be zooming in as a bigger, another bigger. Yeah. Okay.
Big up.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay.
I still feel like I'm doing an eye test, but
You can press F.
Okay.
Level 2.
So actually, what you want to do is type this one on your browser, if you can. This is actually ALTDAI.xy.com is actually the domain that I have, the subdomain I have. This is the full university we call the Advanced Learning Theories, Technologies, Applications, and the Impact. That's a consortium that we have from the Taiwan, University in Taiwan, Graz, University of Memphis, and the Central China Normal University. And then there are a lot of stuff over here. This is an instance, the course that I created for this workshop. So it's altdai.xy.com course view. I hope that I can have a way of sending to you. But so that's where the link is, and going in, and then this would be the authoring. So let me try to do the authoring.
If you want to paste it that Google Doc, you have to open these up. Just take
This one?
Yep.
Okay. Where do I
Okay. Put it in the top actually.
turn in the top?
Yeah, I'll move it over.
Oh, okay.
Let me try it.
Okay. Yeah, just paste over there, and then you can basically.
That's actually for the student volunteers. I like these tiny .cc. I feel like it's a psychological link. You just think a thought and you're there.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I'll just stick it in here. So okay, good.
Yeah.
So one is
Yeah.
that one,
Yeah, that one. Okay.
and the other one. Okay,
Yeah. Let me.
thanks.
Okay. So that's great. So the other one is actually this. Okay, and then in so this one here. This is one. This is another one. And then using this one, they need you log in with your Google account. It's asking you to either use a Google account or GitHub or LinkedIn, all three. If you have the same email account associated with those three things, they're going to be going into the same account. Otherwise, they have three different accounts. So when you go there and then use this one as an enrollment code.
Oh yeah, I was wondering if you just asked that.
Yeah, with the enrollment code. If you go, yeah, SCO17. So if you are there, and then you actually get into this. Okay. So there are four different kind of things that are different levels. One, if you use this one. So for example, if you use this link, they're called the start equals ID. If you go here, you do this one here. This actually give you the authoring for information delivery. Unfortunately, this one only work on desktop right now because So because this one is logging by you probably, so it's asking for login. Oh, this is I can do this one actually. Then if you let's just create this one. Just imagine this is happening, right? So now you actually logged in with this one, and then you can. I'm gonna just using this whatever account this one here.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go to this one, information delivery. This one is it's really loading the one that I showed you. Okay. So this is a 4 characters. The first one is Ben. So this one actually is Ben, right? So you can ask this one to talk.
This is a test.
You can choose other characters. You can choose other characters. If you choose this one, like a Carl, and you actually load, and this is Carl, says the same.
This is a test.
Okay. So, and also each one of those ones are like a slides. Remember, this is information delivery. So you actually can assign specific piece of text by.
Why don't you try to zoom a bit more again?
Okay.
Will
Okay.
that be fine?
Even a bit bigger, actually.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I just took your glasses and still stuff. But also, this way it's on the Google Hangout. Okay.
Yeah. So this is basically the authoring system that you create the 4 different type of let me see, 4 different type of skills. The first one is called information delivery. The second one is called the self-reflection. If you do the self-reflection here, okay. So let's try to do a self-reflection just to show you here. Now, this one, if you save this one, for example, if you save, remember you create a new one, right? You created it. This is stats demo. I will show you the demo here. If you save, well, they call the basically this is a steps of you compile the script and you save. Okay. Now, as soon as you save, you actually can say open. So right now, if you open, this one actually listed by this one that should have the person. Let me see. Okay.
So you can click here to create a new script, or that's something else?
Yeah. So let me see what happened. So well, let's first look at this one. This is a self-reflection. Okay. The self-reflection is actually, I want you to show you this one. Remember, you have the irrelevant new, irrelevant new, relevant old. So this self-reflection is basically asking the question. Actually, I'm gonna see whether I can play this for now. Okay. So remember, I did not do anything. I just, okay, open a
Let's
self-reflection.
take a minute to review the content we just covered.
Okay.
Be sure to end each of your sentences with a period. Listen closely to the hints and feedback I'll be providing you. Click on the blue Next button to begin. After you finish, your doctor will have a few things to say about your blood glucose level.
Okay.
What is insulin and how is it involved with type 2 diabetes?
So this one actually was a project that we did with Xerox that support us. Just give some money. Say, okay, here Xerox actually trying to work with insurance company to help other people recognize the danger of diabetes. So now let's go back to this one here. So what really happens? So the question is asked, what is the insulin and how it involved with type 2 diabetes? So that is the question. Okay, and then this is the semantic answer. Okay, and then this is the feedback matrix. This one says, I'm gonna, if if in term one, your total coverage, remember there are several things. There are total coverage, the current score, relevant new event. You based on their score, you give feedbacks. So for example, in this case, if this one, the total coverage is near 0.4, the teacher says you're on the right track. If this one's near 0.1, the teacher said, maybe try and explain a little more, okay? So those are the kind of, template for having this conversation. So for example, right now, if you say, I have no idea. So in other words, remember, this is the first one, okay? So this one.
Maybe. Try expanding on your answer.
Okay? So it's very, very stupid, very, very mechanical. Okay, this is, and then it turned out, if you started to copy, so this one actually, I displayed only this. If I want to display more, so let me just do this one here, just a little bit. So if I actually have a show all those things, let me show you, show this, and then I'm going to save again. I'm showing every single one of those, those 4 quadrant plus total coverage and the current score.
Let's take a minute to review the content we just covered. Be sure to end each of your sentences with a period. Listen closely to the hints and feedback I'll be providing you. Click on the blue Next button to begin. After you finish, your doctor will have a few things to say about.
So this is supposed to be a doctor. So now,
what is insulin and how is it involved with type 2 diabetes?
so in other words, now if I say, I have no idea. Okay. So now you say total coverage is very, very little.
Depending on your answer.
Current contribution, of course, the first one, current contribution and total coverage is the same. Relevance, because remember, those 4 things are actually normalized. So all together added to 1. So irrelevance is very high. Okay, so now if I type again, so I have no idea. See what happened here?
Maybe.
Total score not changing at all.
Your answer.
Okay, but if you look at the irrelevant and the new, it's nothing here. No, nothing. Irrelevant new and the relevant new is nothing, but irrelevant old is very high. Okay, so based on those, you can construct those different you can construct all those things. You say, okay, I'm going to say if in turn 1 this is high, let's imagine that we say, well, I do not want the student. Your question says, in the last 5 slides, what was not talked about? Then you would encourage to have irrelevant and new things there. So in other words, that's the level 1 interaction, that guide interaction of self-reflection. Okay. So and then this one is actually two.
I was
Yeah.
just thinking, in terms of time, like what do you think would be good to cover? Like, would you want, if you interrupt in 13 minutes, would that work? Or?
Oh yeah, it's well, you mean the one they finish. So here.
I see a time check, like, so maybe in 15 minutes, if that works.
Oh yeah. So that's one, and then the most sophisticated one is actually this AutoTutor ALSET. Okay, this one I'm going to just show you. This one, this is the true AutoTutor. Everything else, you spend 10% of the time, 10% of effort, reaching probably 70% of the stuff. Now it is the 90% of effort, reaching the last 30% of the things. So I'm going to try to finish by the time. So 10 minutes is fine. So I'm going to use this one. It's like this one. This one is actually we call the AutoTutor Lite. Okay. What this one does is actually give you. I will show you this. So basically, this is called tutoring. You have a seed question. Okay, so for the seed question, it's what thoughts come to your mind based on what you have heard. That's like seed question. So you have expectation 1, expectation 2, there is expectation. For each of the expectation, you have an idea answer and you have a few hints. Okay? So if you consider one question, this one does not have misconceptions. One question with 4 expected answers, 4 expectations, and then each expectation you provided 4 hints. 16 pieces of information plus an idea answer, plus a seed question, plus a summary. So you have altogether 20 pieces of information. And this 20 pieces of information will make the student interact with this system for 20 to 30 minutes.
So just so I understand, you start with the basic question like, what is type 2 diabetes?
Yeah.
And then you type an ideal answer in text.
Kind of semantic answer, the kind of answer that you expect, but do not have to be keyword matching.
And then you type 3 other answers. You said there were 4 answers.
That self-reflection, just the idea answer, nothing else.
Okay, just ideal answer.
Yeah.
Okay. And
This
so it
one-
will automatically figure out how close they are to the ideal answer using some metrics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Use the semantic analysis that I showed.
Got it.
Now, this one is the next step.
Okay.
This one actually give you that expectation of hints. Okay? The other one does not give you hints. Remember, the other one says, okay, good job, do more. It's a generic, there's no content
So
specific.
now I type the question, what is type 2 diabetes? I type one answer, it's some XXY.
Yes, yeah.
Then I type 3 alternative answers.
No,
No.
you don't even, so for the self-reflection, you can almost like automatic. There's
Well,
no
I
alternate.
need for this one.
For this one, you need,
Okay, so then for this one, I
Yeah.
type one answer, and
Yeah.
I type 3 alternative answers, and I have a hint that's in each of the alternative answers.
yes, yeah,
So it will detect whether I'm saying something's closer to an alternative answer.
yes, yes.
And if it's like close to answer 2, it will give me a hint that's for answer 2.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
So for example, in this one, you basically, this actually, this part is information delivery. This actually, this is a demo that we created for the NATO training conference. Okay, so the last one is actually this one. This is actually the most sophisticated. So let me show you how hard it is to do, and I'm going to show you an example. Okay,
Because I was just thinking,
2 minutes.
it could be good, because I'm curious how this would be integrated to us. You, CTL, if you want to log in and just show us 1 or 2 examples of courses, would that be that's possible? Yeah, just because then we could see how we plug in technologies like this to ideally.
Yeah, sure. So this one is the AutoTutor, right? So now, to making the AutoTutor, we're making a conversational base. First, we want to assign the agent, the AutoTutor with personality. Okay, so in other words, this one you actually can configure how the tutor, how the tutor, for example, this is a computer tutor, and then if the computer tutor provide positive feedback and negative feedback, and then how would the typical positive feedback work for this tutor? Okay, and also speech act for the metacognition and the yes/no speech act, how the speech act work, and also rigid pack.
Can I try and zoom 1 second, Xiangen?
Okay.
I think people might just have a hard time seeing the back.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
so I know it's big. It's just.
that's fine.
Can you guys see properly?
Okay.
Good. Okay.
So this one actually give all the elements of a completely configurable AutoTutor that specifically says, for example, the closing or opening, the opening tutor opening, what is the opening, and also tutoring pack, and what is the question, and expectation, and the misconception. So this one is implement the entire EMT, okay? So that's and also have rules. For example, under what condition that the system, behave. Okay. So that's that's one. Of course, if you get this one, you can get. For example, now the first section is actually how to create an engaging, how to create engaging information delivery. So if you could click on here, this is actually an example of whoops. Let me do it different here. So let's.
Welcome, class. When we ended last time, Susan had a question about comparing more than two groups.
Yeah, a question you totally dodged.
So basically, this actually reminds.
Susan's question was about using multiple t-tests to compare multiple groups. For example, let's imagine we are comparing freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. We want to know if there is a difference in the amount of sleep they get per night. In this case, we have multiple groups, which means we need to make multiple comparisons. Specifically, we have 4 groups and 6
So
comparisons.
that's this example, and then this is
The 4
basically
groups are freshmen,
give you an example of how to create an interactive, engaging information delivery. Of course, you can have if you want to shoot your own movie, that's fine. But this one actually can be easily created this way. And then the next one is implementing interactions. Now this one is actually the self-reflection. This one is actually to create one from the self-reflection example. So if you click on there, this one here, and this actually, well, you cannot see, but I just show you. So it's ST equals to self-reflection, and then actually copy the example, and then you can save it from that time on, associated with your Gmail account forever, and you can modify and save, and you can share with others. And then the last, and then the interactive 2, it's actually the TU, the only have hints, no misconceptions, and the interaction 3 is this is actually the AutoTutor one. Okay, so let me try to see what I can do. Okay, so let's well, actually we have 5 minutes. So let me summarize this. AutoTutor actually started with a very, very simple and stupid idea that everybody understands. The EMT, I never failed. Expectation, misconception, carried down.
Got it.
I never failed to convince people this could work. Not the best, but could work. So, and then you decide, okay, what kind of question you ask. So ask deep reasoning questions. Then you say, well, ask deep reasoning questions. As a tutor, you ask questions. If you do not know the answer, you're not good at tutor. As a tutor, if the student get the right answer, you need to say, yes, good job. If you get the wrong answer, you need to correct it. So in other words, that EMT just basically converts you to that level. Okay. So then behind, you use semantic answers. This is natural language style. You use semantics to really compare the answers to the answer with the stored answers. And then use the feedback. Use the right feedback to prompt students to say and think. That's just about the basics of the compositional-based tutoring. In terms of implementation, you can implement this by your own. In other words, there's absolutely no need to really using this. This is when it's like first, it's actually flash-based, which everybody's going to drop, right? So I have another version that I can show you. It's actually an HTML5 version, but you can implement your own. The idea behind it is very, very simple. The larger kind of picture is that we build a tutor for the purpose of engaging learner and the content in a way that they actually get close. Because every piece of content, when it's originally written, with the intended audiences probably not matching the real reader. So you want to make them together. That's exactly what the professors do, right? So then the skill idea, the new skill idea, I'm going to do it very, very quick. But
So it's shareable knowledge of.
Yeah.
Right?
yes. So the new one is actually like this. Let me just try to make this one very quick. AutoTutor. Okay, so this is actually the newer version of the system. What this one really does, okay, is actually the following. If I do this, I think that's probably the take-home message that I want to index. Let me see, just go to see what this one works. Okay, so the idea behind is the following. So far, as the philosophy is actually delivering content using a media, where the media is guided by the principles or the theories of ideas. So the idea is, if in the future, whatever content you have, this is like a content you have over here, okay? So what we're trying to do is building something called a content aware. Aware what is content aware? Aware of the content aware, action aware, what I do, okay? And then individualized facility, where these characters, each and individually serving tutoring purposes, okay? And then right now, for example, you can if I do this, probably I can make it work. So this is actually a
老师好，
this is in Chinese. Actually teach how to
你们好，
compose form. But I'm running out of time.
老师，我在网上看到一
Those
句
of you
寓
guys
言，
in
觉
Chinese,
得十分
you
有趣。
probably enjoy this piece.
它的上联是“若不撇开终是苦
Yeah, this you're probably enjoying this one, but I think this
这是个西字言，把胡子中间的一短竖写成一撇，
I'm gonna
就
turn
成
off
了
this
一
one
个
and I'll
破
answer
字了，
questions.
确实有趣。”。
可是我看到了不同的下联，觉得都挺好的。
是吗？
One
说来听听。
Right?
One thing I was thinking of is I was just gonna ask, just because all of you guys are here, it'd be great. Choose from seats. I'll just ask you and just show for 5 minutes some examples
Sure, yeah, please.
where you can apply this method, where you can apply other things.
Yeah.
You wanna But you said you don't mind taking questions.
Oh, yeah. Ask any questions.
Actually, well, let's clap this for your marathon hour and a half. I like about it. And you said it's in Flash, but I want to see what the concrete example.
This one is actually a 205.
Oh,
The
great,
one
okay.
I have.
But that would be great. I would love to see how we could kind of use this and kind of re-implement a lot of the concrete in a way that we can now.
Question regarding the implementation, do instructors have to create their content from scratch, or they port it over from their existing content?
Well, there's two things. There are 3 or 4 levels of things, right? The first, you have to have your own content. If you have a blog or you have something that you want to use, you already spend a lot of resources on it, right? On top of this one, the first level is actually
So you work control
trying
you
to
up
articulate
and then use this for
the
that.
perspective of discussion. So you've got
Oh, perfect,
concept,
great, okay.
program,
Yes, so what I'm just thinking is I'm trying to, they've never seen the idea of those components, so just to show them examples.
One of the
then they can
most
think how to
important
apply it.
we find that
So,
when you have a single character as a tutor, it is very, very hard.
like 15 minutes more maybe. It's okay,
the
that's fine.
students, they confuse, right? So in this kind of long discussions, you probably want to have the not very good smart student articulate and counter them.
Yes.
To make them to correct. So now we actually at least, avoid confusions. Yeah. So the first level is the information. The second one is self-reflection. That's no author needed. So you just have the semantic author there and ask them this, that's one. Then the third one is I call the TU, basically it's called AutoTutor Light. There's only hints, no misconception. The last one, the AutoTutor, true AutoTutor, actually have expectation and the misconception, and also other contribution of the agents and the region tag. So that's a little bit more different, but the sample that you have, you can use. All you need to change the words. Now the first one, there's no interaction. You can have simple interactions. The second one, the interaction is basically type, right? The third one has interaction, but only uses semantic match. The fourth one, we use not only semantic match, we also use graphical expression. So you want to really make it very, very good, you need to understand graphical expression, which is not very easy. Did I answer your question? Okay. So this is also my component.
Just things that it's good if we see the ideal environment, so the guest speakers can actually see how things can be implemented within the ideal environment. So this is our.
To like see some concrete examples.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
system.
So this is our system. This is the front end. So we generally have a workspace and the tools. I'm just going to go into one particular course so that I can show you. So that's basically how a course looks like. So I mean, there are the basic information like the learning outcomes, the teaching modes, syllabus, and so on. So this is a very general description. In addition, the various tools that we have are like the assessment tool, which is like the quizzing, and where we were thinking about whether the adaptive tutoring could be used. So, for example, an assessment looks something like this. I'm just going to pick one of those. And again, going back to Joseph's example, you were talking about explanation given. So one of the things we were doing, I mean, instead of doing a crowdsourcing, here the students have been giving explanations as to why their answer was right or wrong, or right, why they chose that particular answer. So I was actually wondering if one of the things we could do is using those older data from the rationale that we have collected from the previous set of students, can we use that as a input data to bring in to give explanation? So that's something we can think about and consider. And you were talking about giving hints. So let me just bring another example with the hint.
And I just thought it'd be good for you guys to kind of see concrete examples, because now you can think, well, how would you plug in these conversational agents, or this is data like maybe John, you can apply some of these learning curve methods to, or I know Carolyn, you plugged into edX once, right? But could you plug in here something, launch the chat where students can start discussing, and all of this data, maybe you can kind of speak with this, but all the IDLE data is actually quite centralized, right? Okay. So it can be plugged into dashboards. Do you want to say that about that?
I think Greta is the right person to say, because I'm a user from the operational end, but not from the administrative end.
So within the assessment application, we also have things like, they can give hints. So I mean, looking at your adaptive tutoring system, we are wondering, can that be some sort of plugged in into to give hints?
Yes. So are you using Moodle or which?
This is
basically in-house developed.
Okay, let me see whether this one can be easily wrapped. Okay, so let me see whether it can be easily wrapped. Can I make this one small?
Yeah.
So this one here, right? This one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me go see whether this one actually can be wrapped.
When you say wrapped, you mean?
Yeah, like this. because if he's not be able to wrap, then yeah. So in other words, you can this one. What you can do is there's API of call individual talking head, and then link tutoring dialog to the individual ones. You can bury those things into it, and then that's it. So that's how you can do it, because it's very easy to make this thing talk. A language.
That's the most, you know what?
Yeah.
So
You're using HTML embed.
well, this is actually.
As an iframe.
Basically, I call this one as bounce. Basically, you just whatever content you bounce into there, and then just wrap it with the API. At first, I wrote a browser plugin.
Right.
But browser plugin cannot work on an iPad, so this one actually works on an iPad. So it's HTML5, and then inside each one of those, you can call them. For example, let me see. Just I have a test API, test one over here. Let me see. Yeah. So basically, you can change the talking head. You can change the talking head. In other words, at any given time, you can swap the talking head. You can draw the things, and then it's really a simple. I like the programming. This is actually when I was hiding the mountain for research. I said, okay, I'm going to make something that relies on a flash now. So again, you can do it.
Possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, similarly, we also have something like where students can make submissions. So, okay, all of these are closed. Okay, so if there is a submission folder, so one of the things that we can do here, I'm offhand thinking about some applications. One is, they as a faculty member, they can go in and give feedback, and there is audio feedback as well. So again, we can build in that kind of adaptive tutoring system in where they can give auto feedback. So that's something that we can think about. The other option is, of course, the forum, where again, there are many of you who are working on text analytics. So how can we then do it within the forum? Again, you can also do audio within our forums too. So if that is possible, audio feedback or embedding audio and stuff like that. So
yeah, I have a way of handling forums just like the LCC or bullshit type. So when you can actually screen the forums and detect whether anybody's BS around the way and things like that. The similar idea, just to compare with themselves how consistent they are, whether they're fooling somebody or not. In other words, it's yeah.
And something.
So again, he was talking about that matrix, relevant.
Exactly.
Relevant, irrelevant, old, new. So that's something we can think about too. So information is relevant old, relevant new, irrelevant old, and irrelevant new.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about also for analysis, like the kind of stuff that Carolyn does. So what do you want? Okay, so right now potentially you can see every course on campus because every course for the last 8 years has been IGIL. So how about in Stanford just move this year to campus school-wide? Everything has been IGIL. They have APIs. Min is kind of getting data, so you can kind of have a student in the entire course history. What have they done ideally? What have they looked at? What have they done? What did they post in discussion? And that can be linked to actually outcomes like, what are they making a year later? What job did they get?
Yeah.
So what's your ideal data set, Carolyn, when you look at discussion forums or Xiangen? Like, what courses would you like to see? Do you need 500 posts? Do you need?
Well, actually, so I see a ton of ideas here, but one thing that I think could be interesting, since you're thinking at the level of all of these courses that you have to need I think something we've been talking about recently is about plotting out learning paths for students and trying to learn in a strategic way what might be paths that people haven't tried but that might be valuable for them. to kind of sample out from the paths that we have data on. And so if you actually are collecting data across all the courses at the university for all of your students, you can start to do some of this. And we actually already kind of had plans worked out, but not that data set. So if you are interested, I think we could do some interesting work there. But I think that where we would fit in, I mean, I see you already have a chat that's integrated with your platform, and I see you're already using discussion forums. So for us, what we really do is link our support in at the back end and sort of contribute towards activities as you've already defined them. And so, for example, within the discussion forums, kinds of things that we've worked on are being able to identify students who participated recently in the forum who might be able to respond to a particular student's question. Another thing that we've worked on is trying to identify good role models for students. If there's follow or follow lead kinds of things, I haven't seen you point that out in this particular platform, but if you have those kinds of functions, then that could be something we could hook some of our models into. But in the chat itself, we have, to the extent that that's being used in any of the courses, we have connected our collaborative support to all kinds of platforms. It's only necessary to be able to, get to where your server is. There must be some kind of loop that all of the data from all the client machines is being sent through. That's how these chat environments work. And so we kind of have a pretty generalizable way of linking into those things. Not as fast as I know what you do for just copying a link into an iframe, but it could be done relatively efficiently, I think.
So currently there is only like rating as of now.
Right. Well, so I mean, what we had been doing was more than just like providing a label on a post. So for example, the help seeking support that we did, the way it worked was if a student was going to start a thread, then they could click a button that said, "This is a help request," and then what would happen is the text of that message would be used to be able to pick out potential help providers. Then the student would get this pop-up that said, "Here are 3 students who participated recently who seem like they'd be good to answer this. Would you like to invite them to your thread?" And then the students could click on the ones that they were interested in, and the system would send a link to that thread to those students to say, "Here's a discussion where you could provide some valuable input." So it wasn't really just about adding a label to a post, but it was more than that, but it was easy to embed in an HTML kind of interface to discussion forum. So I'm assuming that a very similar integration to what we did in edX
could be done.
was also an HTML kind of thing.
And so one thing that's nice is tomorrow Ravi Chandran will speak. He's the head of Center of Instructional Technology. So she's the director of Center CDTL.
Center for Development of Teaching and Learning.
Yeah. And so Ravi's Center of Instructional Technology, CIT, basically runs ideally. And so what that means is they've actually got a bunch of programmers who can't do this kind of integration. Whereas if you work with something like Canvas, which every university in the US is switching to a platform, you're not going to get Canvas programmers to make changes for you. But if you can make a pitch to Ravi that this is interesting and important, and Min can probably help you make this pitch.
Actually, I think they've already done that because Chris from ALSET went over and with Ravi, so they're making their components.
It is moving towards interoperability.
Yeah, I think tomorrow I'm going to talk about ACTI. So far, what you have done is it's more like trying to make it more like a local, but XHI is actually global because learning activities not only interaction on this interface, there's actually a lot of other activities. So, for example, right now we had a lot of interactions on this one. If I go to my learning record store.
Maybe I'll take your kind of 2 cents in the sense of I know you've been kind of holding this data for over 68 years, and they've got APS pushing. Other things you think would be interesting on the analytics or teacher side or student side or put some time in here. I'd be curious to get your thoughts.
So this,
Yeah.
so this is like, you know, for example, this is today at 5:30. This is the learning record that I have, which is a standardized, that everything that you can, everywhere in the world, directly send it to a single point. It's a big data collecting all the activities. So that not only, in other words, instead of building customized patch for every single system, you send a very, very simple API, send the standard document, you know, like an API to there, and this one directly importing to DataShop or other things. There are actually a huge community of building utilities based on the XAPI. It's very soon you will put out IEEE standard. So I think making this a little bit more like a one repository of learning behavior. So for example, in the discussion, in XAPI, they actually have something called either called a committee of practice or profile. You can make a profile for discussions. And then for the specific learner, user, you actually can get all the histories since beginning of the time, you know, and also interact. So there are a lot of, you know, what we have considered has been probably, you know, people have had it all the time. They have different systems, and then, you know, the moving forward, the standard would be the direction. So tomorrow we'll done.
Yeah, that would be great, especially if you can share it, or if you send that link when you finish next API, I would share it with you, but especially to speak to Ravi Chandra, he runs CIT, he'd be interested.
Yeah, this one is actually a sandbox. You can try everything you want.
Great.
But there's another one that I use is commercial that actually runs statistics for you. But that one, every month they only give me 20,000 station. So I had an experiment run on that one, so I'm not going to give that to you. But this one,
sure, no, that would be good. And also, if you speak to Chris Boesch, did you meet others? Yeah, am I saying his name right? Boesch. Yes. So he's also Minna's Deputy Director of Research. Chris is Deputy Director for Infrastructure. So he'd love to hear about XAPI because he's building data lake.
Oh yeah.
So maybe he can be using XAPI, which would make it much easier to communicate.
No, XAPI is open source. You can download. You can install their own internal cloud that they're serving us. Yeah, that's fine.
Great. So if you don't mind sharing with him a bit more on what it is, that would be great to get him on board. And so, Dragon, do you have any thoughts? So there's ALSET compliant, but they also have APIs. I think they prefer to keep data locally, but do you have any thoughts with this kind of data from ideally and what it historically? You know, what kinds of teacher or learn analytics things could be incorporated, or even if it's existing systems that could be brought in, do you have any thoughts or ideas or what your wishes would be?
It's a really good question.
That's true.
Institutions are really trying to address some of these, issues and challenges. I mean, they are some of the works that we did, for example, on a system called Loop, where we try to kind of implement some of these. Yeah, some of these fairly simple types of dashboard things that can be incorporated, but it's open source, it's really available. The thing is, I mean, we kind of specialize in two types of LMSs, Whiteboard and Moodle. However, it should be hard to actually also kind of connect to this one. That's really, I think one of very few, which is kind of open and suitable for LMSs. The alternative also would be the Tutoring as well. We mentioned
So the link is Loop L-O-O-P and what should
it should be the University of Melbourne.
Loop Melbourne. Okay, sorry, what's the other one?
And it's on pass, the one that I talked about.
Ah, that one. Okay, got you.
I think XML also connect with ALTI. Their standard, they should have an easy, because they keep the same information, just a very easy mapping from one to another. That's
Sure. Yeah, so happy to have that conversation later on. And you mentioned also Persol. Persol is a system on its own. However, it's fully LTI compliant, so and serve both as a provider and client. So.
Okay, and I mean, you have your talk mapped up. I think, if you can make an aside to that when you talk about, you have all the NUS stakeholders there, right? You have CIT, CDTL, maybe you can mention those things that gets people's heads. John, do you have any things you want to kind of comment on? I mean, this is data mining, like 4 years, 30,000.
Sure, I'd love to see that data set and outcomes. Tying that together would be
throw out like 2 random concrete questions you want to ask there that people aren't asking yet?
Well, somewhat similar to what Carolyn was going, but trying to find out what are optimal paths for students to take courses, what courses do better outcomes. So many things, a lot of confounding variables in the data that you may or may not know. Instructors, what was taught, but how things change. But it'd be interesting to see what the data might show.
And the kind of outcomes you would look at, would that be like exit GPA after 4th year, or?
I mean, it could be. Ideally, if you're tracking the students and doing some kind of interview, create a data set where data know and could somehow quantify what is a good outcome. It's
like salary or match job that they wanted,
Yeah.
that's what they got.
Or even if you're surveying satisfaction with their life.
All right.
That's how they're going.
So when we open the session tomorrow, we'll let you know a little bit more about just to preview. We, as ALSET, the data lake is just one of several initiatives. Another one is to administer matriculation and graduate surveys at the entire university level. So that means PIs and collaborators associated with the institution will be able to answer questions into that the entire 20,000 participants will answer. That can be operationalized. So I think Joseph and I and a couple other people in ALSET are also very interested in harnessing recommendation systems and machine learning to put course recommendations as well as study findings within the course, both longitudinally and across courses within the same, because there's compounding variables there, right? So if you instrument one course very highly to have a lot of these types of reminders and anything, it's arguable whether that participation comes at the cost of less participation in another course, right? So we want to make sure that that's controlled for.
We also work on recommenders. We have ONR project. That's Kurt, the ET project. We integrate Tutoring and then AutoTutor plus vegan and stuff. And we write a recommender system based on XAPI. Go back to the XAPI and we configure kind of very easy matrix kind of configuration of what is cool, like a specified prerequisite structure. I can go to the XAPI, find what you have done, what you have not done, and then come back with the recommender system.
And so one thing that we've been talking about was thinking about looking to recommend a system for helping think students more on a career trajectory. So if we kind of take some of the data about what courses students would say, do we give them recommendations about, given their career, what courses should they check out, what resources, what study tips? So do you guys have any sense of what's been done in that area, what literatures, or maybe the things you're doing there around lines?
I think if you consider all ITS basically are under recommender system, right? They basically recommend what the dialogue moves are next. So there are several levels, like Kurt's, outer loop level, inner loop level, right? ITS is more like inner loop. Now, outer loop actually, my favorite system is actually ALEX, using the knowledge space to really construct a well-defined domain, which works very, very well. Now, knowledge space, there are R modules, there are actually R package that actually does the recommender if you care to go to detail to do that. Now, what we did is, which we were originally using the SCORM 2004 dynamic sequencing, it's very hard to configure.
Just say what SCORM is.
SCORM, Shareable Content Object Reference Model, which is one of the legacy ADL stuff. It works, but it's more like you have to consider a million different things. Using the XAPI, go in, look in the history, basically checking whatever you want configured, it's much easier. That's what we are doing in our current recommender system. We're doing is Moodle. We have Moodle.
Yeah, on the side of making recommendations about courses and all that, I think it connects with what Xiangen was saying, but also what we both suggested about modeling the data. But I think that beyond just being able to make a good recommendation. The question is, how do you present that to a student so that they're going to be willing to take it? Because at that point, it's a really consequential recommendation that you're making. Also, it happens relatively infrequently that a student is sitting down to reconsider their trajectory. You know, so if you would say, oh, you know what, it would be great for you right now to change majors and take this class I've never heard of. And, you know, and like, it's, you know, that's a scary recommendation, right? So I think it's important to think about these issues of what's, you know, studies of adoption. You know, I mean, even I think here we could draw from some wisdom from some of the patient-centered medicine studies about giving advice to patients, because, you know, on the one hand, it's like, well, what's the best advice a doctor can give a patient that's what they really need to do? But if they're going to ignore it, that doesn't really help, does it? So then, you know, if there are all these questions about compromises, and, you know, but also how should it be presented, and what kind of a relationship does that person who's giving the advice have to have, or if it's an agent, what kind of connection should it have with the person who's making the recommendation to, so that in the end you get the optimal outcome in terms of their education. Because again, you know, if you make this great set of recommendations. So oftentimes with the learning path, it's about plotting out a course trajectory. It's not just about this would be a good course for you. Yes. There's a whole set of things. Well, if you give them a whole set of things and they do a few of them and leave off others, it could be actually really bad. So I just think that it's a whole ball of issues, and so then it goes beyond just recommender systems. But think about the fact that this is a really different kind of recommendation problem.
So maybe let me make it less scary, but actually a more interesting point of what it's not students. It's actually there's a huge issue where they're trying to retrain the workforce. So you've got a lot of adult learners. They all get $500 credits to spend in MOOCs or whatever they want. So how do you recommend to these kinds of people, 50 or 60 who are kind of thinking of where they want to get retrained? Maybe that's another kind of question.
Yeah, but it isn't less consequential actually at that point. It's maybe even more consequential. They have a job, right? And now you're asking them to spend their precious time on something. And actually, we're talking, so in the US also, there's a growing interest in the idea of workforce training and plotting out trajectories in those contexts. And it's actually even more complicated. And one reason is because it's less easy to track also the paths that exist. And there are companies whose job it is to help people get training, but they know that there are lots of really good paths that they just don't have the data on what those paths are, and they're not collecting the data they would need to be able to find it. And you can't just sample randomly. So yeah, I mean, you just can't get around the fact that this is a really, really difficult recommendation problem from multiple perspectives. But I think, so I happen to know that John and I are really interested in this problem, so we should talk more.
Yeah, in the interest of time.
Oh yeah.
I think our invited speakers must be very exhausted from the perspective. And I think even our local delegates are flagging too. So I think we'll have more discussion over the next 2 days, especially for the last day we have a discussion. So let's thank Xiangen